Hi everyone, welcome back to the art show part 2. I wanted to, before we get into the formal art show, I wanted to show you how we started off our year. So prior to making our art for the art show, we started the year with texture art. Now this is an example of our texture art. What we did was we put paper on some textured material to make these shapes. So this was an exploration in texture, in feeling, and how the paint responded to the textured material. And then we moved on to finger painting. Now finger painting was a smash hit. Our artist had a wonderful time exploring the paint. It was a visceral experience, a textural experience, and they learned how the paint reacted to the paper, how paint moved on the paper, how it felt on the paper, and how the colors changed when they were combined. Now I have an example here of a texture, finger painting art and what it looked like. And this is an example of the paint that we used. Then we moved on to painting with a paintbrush and a palette knife on paper. So here's our example of the easel, of the palette knife. And then we put the paper on an easel. So the artists were standing. So I wanted them to experience standing, painting with a paintbrush and palette knife, mixing colors, and how the paint responded to the paper and the palette knife and the paintbrush. And then we moved on to, and bear with me, walking with my camera. Then we moved on to the artist study. So our artist study was Mark Rothko, and here's an example of Mark Rothko. Mark Rothko is a painter. He was a painter in around the 1950s. He painted big. His canvases were very, very big, and he wanted to paint experiences. He wanted the viewer to walk away with a definable experience that they would tell other people about. So he wanted the viewer to stand inches away from his artwork, and he wanted them to stand there for minutes. So they would have an experience that engulfed them in the painting. So in the painting, he wanted them to experience serenity, calm, meditation. He wanted to have a cerebral experience, and he also wanted to paint the human emotion. So our artists were asked to paint like Mark Rothko, and the concept was to paint back and forth and to paint human emotion, or their emotion. So when you see their artwork, ask them what they wanted to convey for their emotion. Now this is a study of Mark Rothko after we painted our artwork that's going to be in the art show that you will see, but this is a study after. This was done with a tempera paint cake with a smaller paintbrush and on much smaller paper that we did our art piece with. But this is examples of what our artist study was after our art piece. Now I want to take you over here to the wheel. This wheel that we did made a lot of pots on. So this wheel I took to every class, and every artist made a pot on this wheel. So this is just showing you what the wheel looked like. They all had a small piece of clay, and I helped guide them make a pot, and we will see that in the art show. Now let's go back here after we made a pot. We had a great, amazing time doing clay exploration. Clay exploration also led up to our pot, where first they explored the clay, they felt the clay, they learned what the clay can do, what it's like, how malleable it is, how it dries. And these are examples of the clay exploration from different classrooms. The clay exploration had many, many stories and amazing experiences that our artists had with this clay exploration. I highly recommend getting some clay and putting it out for your artists. And then we finished up with sketching. Now, I introduced the sketching pencil and the concept of sketching their experience. So each artist had a turn or time to come to the table and just sketch what they want, anything that they would like to sketch. And these are examples of what our artist sketched. This also came with many, many stories. So that's leading up to our art show, and now I will go through our art show class by class. So stay tuned for your class. Bye, everyone.